Hello and welcome to Undercurrent. Now, marriage is a profoundly meaningful way for most people to express their love, regardless of gender. Unfortunately, one Catholic church right here in Perth is now saying that they won't do any marriages at all if same-sex marriage is legalised. Xinjing has the story.
The federal government's push to amend the marriage law to include same-sex marriage. This caused concern among Perth Catholic clergy. Archbishop Barahiki has warned that the church will stop conducting legal marriages if it was forced to carry out same-sex unions.
For two people to get married, it should be a male and a female. That's because the church sees in a male and female two people who are complementary, whereas the other would entail a redefinition of marriage and a totally new concept. So the church, while it sees that two same-sex people can be in love with each other, the church accepts the tradition that marriage is for a male and female only. Gay people can have equal rights when it comes to wills and partnerships, but the objection is that this is an attack on traditional marriage, the institution of marriage.
I guess the way we feel is that we feel really, we really feel for couples who are in same-sex relationships, and that there's no way really, I guess, in our community that we can, that there's a way of acknowledging their love for one another or the relationship that they have. But I suppose we also feel that it's different from a marriage, in the sense that I guess in our relationship where, because we're different genders, we really complement one another, and that complementarity, I guess, runs through every part of our relationship.
The church is concerned that this desire, this attempt to redefine marriage really changes the institution of marriage. And so it doesn't seem to be about gay rights, but an attack on marriage as the community has always accepted it and as the church teaches.
It's very important for children to have a parent of each gender as a role model for them throughout life. And so, yeah, I think that's something I value very highly, that they have, having all boys, having a dad who's a strong role model, and as well as seeing the feminine side of a relationship as well for our boys, because one day hopefully they'll want to find that in someone else, and for our girl that we. Yeah,
I think it's really important for children to have strong role models of both male and female role models, I guess, in their lives, who are significant presences for them, and help them to work out what it means to be a man or a woman in the world today.
Marriage between a man and a woman is what it is now, so that doesn't need any redefinition. And I'm sure that great majority of people who are in marriage as we've traditionally known would probably object that it's going to be redefined just because a few people want to attack the institution of marriage.
I suppose it's a way of celebrating differences instead of saying that things are the same. I think they're different, and it's okay to celebrate difference and diversity. And a marriage between a man and a wife is different from a relationship between two men or two women, or single people even, and the relationships that they have with the community and the important people in their lives.
Gay people can have equal rights when it comes to wills and partnerships, but the objection is that this is an attack on traditional marriage, the institution of marriage.
all you need.
The replica of Captain Cook's Endeavour returned to its Fremantle birthplace this week. Not to worry if you missed it though, Undercurrent was there to catch all of the fanfare.
We've been sailing for the last 180 days to the day of arriving at Fremantle, and with that there's been about 8 different voyages, 8 different legs heading from Sydney from April, so we've been sailing for about 6 months now. I guess each leg has had its rewards, each leg's had its own unique difference to it, whether it be gales, storms, whether it be the topography, whether it be the ports that we've been to itself. It's been a very rewarding experience taking this ship around Australia.
The welcome here today in Fremantle has been amazing.
Pretty good. Townsville was a highlight, Darwin, Sydney, all been pretty good, yeah.
Coming into Fremantle where the ship was originally built, and just as I'm standing today, 2 hours earlier we were coming in with a whole flotilla with our cannons blazing and people on the foreshore waving and cheering. I guess it's hard to beat that. It's recreating history in a lot of ways. When we go out to sea, we sail the ship as Cook would have done 241 years ago, and from that research we've learnt quite a lot, and also the aspects of living on board the vessel as well. So when you make something to a certain degree that it is a living organism, that people can actually feel, touch, and we're actually utilising the ship as Cook would have done, it really throws another dimension into the aspect of history.
Well, Endeavour was a really tough ship in a day, and she still is. She was a really tough vessel at sea, and the hull is very strong as well. She was designed to be often loaded on the beach, fully loaded, so she's very strongly framed by design. And she performs just as well today as she did then.
Certainly we have to comply with a lot of safety authorities. What we generally say, it's 18th century sailing but 21st century safety. Of course we have to provide the right safety equipment for people to climb 38 metres aloft. We do have engines, but they're very reluctantly used. We use engines to make sure that I can say we can arrive at the lovely port of Fremantle at 1100 hours.
But of course in this day and age we do have 20th century deadlines that we have to meet as well, so sometimes we do have to use engines and modern technology. But we still have sextants and all the old traditional navigational equipment on board, and we try to use them as much as possible.
So there is some safety aspects, there's some sort of compensations, but look, it is fairly minimal, and when we do arrive port, all these modern conveniences are cleverly hidden away, so when people step on board the ship, they can just imagine what Cook and his crew lived for the last 3 years.
Climbing the mast is a favourite part of my job. Climbing up to loose the sails, set them, and then furl them again when we don't need them. It can be scary, yeah. The worst conditions is hail because your fingers go numb and it's hard to grip, but you've got some amazing conditions up there watching dolphins and the sunrise, so that's lots of fun. And we had the dolphins on this leg coming from Geraldton, which has been amazing. We saw 2 dolphins come to the bow, and then 4 flanked by a group of 4 behind them, and they played in the bow wake. They surfed in that for a good half an hour. It was magical.
As of today, on the 13th, on the 14th, we're open to the general public from 10 o'clock. Last tickets are sold at 4 o'clock as a museum ship. So we're open here for 19 days. And then we'll be setting sail to a voyage to Bunbury and return, and then we're involved with an ISAF, which is a very important event that's happening in Perth and Fremantle, and setting sail back to resume our circumnavigation early January.
Thank you.
In this week's Vox-Pop segment, Sarah Miller was in the Murray Street Mall to ask you, the general public, your thoughts about reforms to Australia's gambling laws.
Don't explain. Lots of little victories take on the pain.
The federal government recently made reforms to Australian gambling laws requiring some pokie players to have a prepaid card registered in their name to prevent them losing more than a set amount of money in a certain period of time. To find out what you think about this, we hit the streets of Perth. Do you think gambling's a growing problem in Australia?
Yes, it is.
It's a growing problem everywhere.
Not sure whether it's a great problem, but I think it is a great problem everywhere.
Absolutely. Some people that are addicted, but some people, some people can just go there and have fun. Others, they have to go all the time.
Shocking. Absolutely shocking.
Very big problem, and they should close everything down, the whole lot of it.
It's a waste of money. The odds are too poor.
I think poker machines, as far as sporting events and that go, are a good thing. But there are a lot of people that, get caught up in it.
Recent government reforms to gambling laws in Australia require some pokie players to have a prepaid card registered to their name.
Excellent idea. Yeah. Best idea out. Yeah, anything like that, yeah. That'd be a good idea.
Yeah, I suppose for the people that have got a problem, yeah.
I guess if they're in debt, things like that. Yeah. Then stop them going to the casino and stuff.
If they do it to a limit and keep it at that limit, once that limit's gone, that's all they can use, that's fine, but I don't know how that'd work. Some people might, not be able to do it properly, but yeah, I think it is a good idea.
It sounds like a good idea, whether it actually works, and then it's one part of gambling. What about everything else you can actually go gamble on? It's only one little thing amongst a whole range of things, so,
I think it's a good idea, but a better idea is to get rid of the poker machine.
I got the TAB and they've got all the things they tell you all the time about people losing lots of money, so it needs a bit of restriction.
What are some other possible solutions, do you think?
Put more bans in for people that are, frequent gamblers. They do know. I mean, I know that Burrs would do, but some people, get in the back door.
Perhaps it would be a good idea if they didn't have, money outlets at casinos, where you can go and use your ATMs, yeah.
Reducing hours would probably cut down some of their gambling, but not take it all out altogether, but just reduce the hours would be great.
Oh, I don't know. It'd be a hard thing to do now in the eastern states. Western Australia's got the best thing because they've only got the one place where we can gamble.
Perhaps the government need to put more into sporting facilities and forget about the poker machines.
Flashing lights, it's a real show.
While prepaid cards for some pokie players are a great start, there are still a number of other solutions that need to be taken to prevent gambling addiction. I'm Sarah Miller, reporting for Undercurrent.
Have you ever been woken up by the sound of an excessively loud train horn? When we come back, Sarah Miller has the story on what is going to be done about it.
You shut it out, but I can't hear a word you say.
Welcome back to Undercurrent. Next up, Sarah Miller has the story on how trains sounding their horns is becoming something of a problem for residents living near Perth's railway lines.
Some residents in the Queen's Park and Cannington areas have been complaining about train noise and inconsistent train horns. Gary Ingram is one of these frustrated residents. He moved to the area 2 years ago in the hope of a peaceful retirement. However, the train noise has become such a disturbance for Gary and his family that he recently had to install window shutters to try and block out the noise. So why are the train horns inconsistent, and is it maybe necessary to have sound barriers in the area?
I'm just spending $7,500 for roller shutters to try and keep some of the noise out. The next option is sell up and move out. If you go on the other side of the railway line, you'll see every second house is for sale. People just can't stand the noise.
Well, the train line through Queen's Park and East Cannington causes a lot of noise. We have people making complaints generally about the noise, but in particular too, problems with drivers excessively sounding the horn crossing a level crossing.
Some train drivers don't blow their horn at all. Some give us a little toot which is acceptable, and there are others that just blow it all the way through here. It varies, it just depends which idiot's driving the train.
The people in the eastern suburbs should be able to have peaceful sleep in the morning, and there needs to be some engineering to reduce the amount of noise coming off the trains.
Well, they could put concrete barriers up. The other simpler solution is talk to their drivers. I mean, I've spoken to their instructor, a chap by the name of Andy May, at Claysbrook, and I said, Andy, can't you ask your drivers to just be a bit sensible? And I get nothing from him.
Well, what I've written to the Minister asking him to install sound walls along the intersections. The Minister hasn't taken this issue at all seriously. He made some jokes about it in Parliament in his usual behaviour.
I've spoken to as many people as I can and no one cares because it's Queen's Park. It's not Dalkeith or Nedlands, it's Queen's Park. We live in tents here.
The Barnett Liberal government doesn't really care about people living in the eastern suburbs. We've been waiting over 3 years for the refurbishment of Queen's Park train station. It's time the government took the eastern suburbs seriously.
Look, any complaint that we have about our operations is an issue for us, but this has come up before. We always, whenever there's complaints about noise, whether it be normal operations or horns, we do look into it, and we have looked into this as recently as December last year and done noise monitoring, checked noise levels there, and they are within acceptable levels.
No, clearly the sound isn't acceptable to the local community and something has to be done. It's not good enough for people who don't live in this community to tell us that this is what we have to accept. It's about time that some action was taken to help.
There are no Australian standards for train horns, but we have our own parameters that we operate within, and we watch them fairly closely and try and keep them both the duration and the intensity of the sound within reasonably acceptable limits, given that we are required by rail safety regulations to have the duration, frequency and intensity of the sound at certain levels. They're minimum levels that we have to comply with.
No, I've got their graph that they sent me, and it's telling me that it's way above where it should be. Yeah, blue, that's quite reasonable. It's when it's up here in the 80 decibels, where a lot of it is, that's where it's not a lot of fun at all. And there's quite a bit of red, as you can see in there. Yeah. That's starting to get right up in the level.
We went out and did noise monitoring as recently as December last year, and they were well within the parameters that we set. And there's been no change in the way, the frequency of trains or the number of trains, or there's been no change in our operations since then. So we're quite happy that we are meeting not only the required standards, but our own standards for operations in that area.
No, it hasn't always been like this. I've been here over 16 years. In this particular house, just over 2, but in the last 12 months it's got really bad. Really bad. It's worse than ever.
Well, there's a lot more trains than there used to be. You know, you barely get, you'd be lucky if you get five minutes most times without hearing a train going by. So there is a lot more noise, you know.
So this is our retirement house. And I didn't expect a nightmare like this. No. The train drivers just don't care.
That particular rail line is one that's been there for a long, long time, longer I'd suggest than any of the residents, and I think if you choose to live near a railway line, you've got to expect railway noise.
Perth's median house price may continue dropping for the rest of the year. REIWA's research boss, Stuart Darby, has the story.
Welcome back to REIWA House to have a look at our latest data for the September quarter. Look, and pretty much it is as we saw in our earlier discussion a month or so ago, the figures for the September quarter are through. Our preliminary data from our REIWA members from REIWA.com suggests that the Perth median house price has fallen by 2.1%, and that's likely to see the median house price fall from our latest June figure of $479 down to about $467 to $470 once the official data is through. We talk a lot about our stock of listings, the properties for sale on the market. They've fallen something like 18% since the peak in mid-April, where we saw about 18,200 properties on the market in Perth, and that's fallen to just on 15,000 at the end of September. So it's a healthy decline. But we're seeing, once we unpack that, we actually see a few other things actually in there. That house listings have fallen 20%, multi-residential listings have fallen 22%, but what we are seeing is quite a stock of land listings for sale. something like 3,100 blocks of land for sale, and that's been increasing progressively over the last 12 to 18 months. That's certainly an important dimension too, that basically what we're seeing there is a lot of people that probably bought land during the boom are reselling back into the marketplace, along with some smaller developers who are listing their developments through REIWA agents. Turning to, I guess, the other probably critical measure in the marketplace is what the rental market's doing, and I think it's important to probably for people to understand too that the rental activity is in fact is a bigger part of the real estate market than in fact the housing market. We see more rental leases happening every quarter or across the year than we actually do in terms of house sales, so that just highlights the importance of the private rental market. What we have actually seen, and we can confirm that yes, we saw a 4% increase in the median rent to $395 for the September quarter. And that's a 7% increase for the year to September, so that's been the strongest increase we've seen in 3 years. The vacancy rate is the other key measure to look at, and that's also seen the amount of property available for lease fall from 3,600 at the end of September down to about 2,800. And so what that also means is that we've actually seen the vacancy rate decline, and it's fallen from 3.4% at the end of June to 2.8% at the end of September. So that's certainly one that we're watching. It's fallen through the 3% barrier. It's the first time since March 2009. And when we fall below 3%, that generally is an indication that there is some real pressure starting to build in the rental market. So REIWA is certainly watching that with interest. And again, it clearly, I think, just reinforces probably what we said last time, that people are choosing to rent rather than buy in uncertain times. And just to round out, I think there's probably some important things to appreciate about the rental market, because as I say, it is very much the forgotten part of the housing system, but it's that effectively 1 in 5 people rent in the private rental market, and in parts of Perth that's as high as 1 in 4 when we look at the central part of Perth. Nearly half the multi-residential market is actually rented, so it's actually owned by investors and rented to the private market. And of those properties, something like 60% of them are actually managed by real estate agents, and the balance are then owned, the investors are choosing to manage those properties themselves. So until next time, when we'll probably take a look at what's been happening in regional Western Australia. Thank you.
In July of this year, the Australian netball team beat New Zealand to become the world champions. Nick Hayes managed to catch up with one of the team's stars, Susie Fuhrmann, otherwise known as the Fuhrmannator.
Is it true this program was brought to you by WA's most trusted car dealer, John Hughes?
Absolutely.
Susan, welcome back to Undercurrent. Last time we had a chat, you lost the gold medal in the Commonwealth Games, but now you're a world champion. How's it feel?
Nice to have that little bit of a ring to it. Yeah, we did lose the Commonwealth Games, but I tell you what, a world championship makes up for it 100-fold. Seriously, we were so... You can't really describe what you felt like when, it was actually, it was announced you're a world champion. It's just completely ecstatic, and I know all the other girls feel exactly the same.
How important was the game? I mean, right down to the wire again. How does that feel? I mean, go through some of the emotions that you were feeling on the day.
It's just the absolute biggest adrenaline rush you will ever have in your life. I mean, I don't know why we do it to ourselves every single time, going into overtime and having to win it by 1 point, but it makes for a great spectator sport. Yeah, we were just, pumped of adrenaline, just so excited. And, when you actually get out there on court, you're in your own little bubble and you're just playing your own game. So that's what we train for.
It's a big season for Perth, the local side. I mean, you've recruited well, a new coach, new shooter, everything's new. Have we just bought a premiership here?
Yeah, it's a whole new face to the fever, as you're saying. I mean, new coach Norma Plummer. I mean, a lot of expectation is coming, on her shoulders as she comes into our team. So really looking forward to what she can bring. Me personally, myself working with her, I absolutely cannot wait. But as you said, a couple of really great recruits. We've got Catherine Cox coming over, who's going to be working out the front of Caitlin Bassett. I mean, that combination there, what defensive combination is really going to be able to combat that? I'd love to see them try.
Susan, you've recently been announced as the ambassador for the Alcohol Think Again program. How important is that to you?
Alcohol in the community is such a huge issue. So, I mean, it's of huge importance to me to see the effect that it has, you know, on everyone, you know, on everyone around me. I'm just so proud to be able to stand up, you know, for netball and for Alcohol Think Again, the program itself, to represent this issue. It's something that I really believe in. You know, I don't think alcohol really plays a part at sporting events. So fair enough, it's okay for people to have a quiet drink, but I mean, so often in history we've seen where alcohol has actually started to disrupt the sport on the sideline, and I don't think it needs to be slapped in people's faces as they come to the game.
We've got the Chogham Games coming up.
Yeah.
And again, New Zealand. Do you think they're going to be coming out firing for you? Do they want revenge?
Absolutely. I know coming off the Commonwealth Games, that's the first thing I wanted to, you know, to get back out there and prove that we've got what it takes to win. So I know the Kiwis are going to be coming out strong, and they always do.
How do you come up against the New Zealand team each time? Because it's got to be nerve-wracking.
Yeah, I tell you what, we do a lot of preparation. You know, we get in there and we study everything about them. You know, we know every player, we know their strengths, their weaknesses, how to combat them, you know, what we can change up on the court. And I think that's the key to any game, is just to be as prepared as you possibly can, leave no stone unturned, and we're definitely doing that. Winning
the World Championships, is that putting netball on a higher playing field there against the other bigger sports like AFL, soccer, rugby? It was absolutely incredible coming back from the World Championships in Singapore and hearing so many people commenting on the game that actually watched the game, that they'd enjoyed the sport. You know, for me as a netballer to hear that was absolutely incredible. You know, for so many years it was like, oh, you know, netball, that's just that other sport that women play. But to hear that people are absolutely getting into it and loving every minute of it, you know, sharing my passion, it's great. What is it you love about Perth?
I love the people, I love the atmosphere, and I don't know, I just love the laid-back culture. You know, I'm not a huge city person, and so Perth's just the right size for me.
Well, unfortunately, that's it for another episode of Undercurrent. It's been great to have your company. Now, if you've got any comments on anything you've seen tonight, don't forget you can join us on our Facebook page. Just do a search for Undercurrent. I'll be back again on 6PR between 3 p.m. and 6 p.m. on Sunday, or tune in this time next week to catch another episode of Undercurrent. I'm Jason Jordan. Good night.